Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Josh Hennick filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. A busy day already around the NFL. You thought yesterday was wild, and today there is some significant Eagles news we got to get to, dealing with players coming, players going, and of course to review what yesterday meant for the Eagles offseason so far. We are getting to all right now with NFL insider Adam Caplan, the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Adam, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm well. Look, it's busy. It's that time of year. Free agency always starts on Monday these days. It doesn't start on Wednesday. It's people are like, oh, this has to be, you got to wait till Wednesday. No, not anymore. Not anymore.
So let's get to the stories in order of happening at this point. So thescore.com is reporting that Kyzir White is rejoining Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. I feel like that's like the least surprising news of the day.
Yeah, look, we know the Eagles are going to lose some players to teams where their coaches that used to be with the Eagles are executives, and that's happened at least in a couple instances. And this one with Kyzir White was one of their starting inside linebackers. This opens up two now because T.J. Edwards is now with the Bears. We'll get to him in a second. Nakobe Dean obviously would be a starter at one of those positions, and they'll have to figure out who will start at the other opposite Dean. But it's not a big deal. I mean, it's in terms of Eagles losing White, that was widely expected that they would lose him. It was widely expected they would lose T.J. Edwards. Though Edwards did like Philly, he moves on. It wasn't quite the money that we were expecting, though. I would tell you that. With 3 years and $19.5 million, not that over $6.5 million a year is something to sneeze at, but he gets a nice deal. It's got some guarantee money in year two, but it does open up a lot of roles here. You know, I do wonder. Christian Ellis was a fantastic special teams player, very explosive. Also played well in limited snaps on defense. Just makes you wonder, will he get a chance to push for playing time next season?
Adam, you mentioned you're the third person I've now heard mention that you're surprised Edwards didn't get more money. I mean, how much of it was Edwards basically wanting to play for the Bears? It seems like he was like almost the first move that happened after 12 p.m. yesterday.
Yeah, look, we know that that there are 3 or 4 teams in with him, and it's just a matter of where he was going to go and what his role will be. Now, here's another interesting note on this T.J. Edwards signing. Edwards will not be their middle linebacker, most likely. Tremaine Edmonds should be their middle linebacker. That's the position he plays. Edmonds, by the way, making $18 million a year. So where will they play him? That's going to be the interesting spot for T.J. Edwards now, because he goes from more of a 34 defense to a 43 scheme under Matt Eberflus, who brings in the defense that he ran with the Colts in the second year as the head coach. So Edwards can play weak side or strong side, but the bottom line is he's no longer being an inside linebacker. That was pretty interesting.
That is very interesting. So now you mentioned Nakobe Dean, you mentioned Christian Ellis. We know how he has a long history of not being a part of the first couple days of the free agency boom. Is it fair to say that the Eagle fan can expect maybe an addition, maybe a little bit later in the offseason for depth at linebacker?
Yeah, sure. It's whether it's a draft or free agency, yeah. And remember, they picked up Kyzir White on April 5th of last year, so it's really not a big deal. Them losing 2 inside linebackers, look, it was a position of strength, which is what we thought coming into the season. It was finally not a weakness, but now it's time for Nakobe Dean to get on the field and take a look at him.
Speaking of getting on the field, Adam, the Eagles are reportedly signing Rashaad Penny to be one of their new running backs. So what is his role going to be in this offense?
Yeah, so he agreed to a deal in the last 2 hours. Barring a surprise, this should end the career of Miles Sanders with the Eagles. Why do I say that? I said barring surprise. I didn't say definitely will happen that he won't come back. But let me explain it why there's really not much room. Trey Sermon's a guy we reported last fall. They were not going to cut him, just though it looked kind of curious. The guy only had 2 carries, and they were looking for guys to release, and they would not release him. They didn't. They also have Kenny Gainwell, their third down back. Kennedy Brooks is on the roster, but he's just it's highly unlikely he would make it. And, of course, Boston Scott's unsigned with Sanders. But Rashaad Penny, I know the Eagles liked coming into that draft 4 years ago. Super explosive, very good size. He's got his weight under control. I remember with the Seahawks, he was a little bit heavy. Significant injury history. He's never played close to a full season. Coming off a broken leg, also had a significant knee injury years ago. But he led the NFL in rushing, Josh. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I believe somewhere in the final quarter of the 2021 season, he was phenomenal. So the guy's gifted. It's a prove-it deal. And it's kind of one of these deals. If the guy could give them 10 games, at the very least, it's going to be worth signing because he's so explosive. And by the way, he doesn't catch the ball a lot, but when he does, he could take it to the distance. He was, if you play fantasy football, he was amazing on that stretch 2 years ago. I mean, he finally put it together. So, look, yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise. It wasn't the kind of the name we were looking at, but I like it. I like it because I know how explosive he is. And this was Pete Carroll's call, by the way. When he was trying to around as a surprise first-round pick in 18, 5 years ago, that was Pete Carroll made the call. He loved the player. Now, did they overdraft him? Probably so. But very gifted, and again, if he could just stay on the field, this could be a steal.
Yeah, you mentioned he led the NFL 6.3 yards per attempt in 2021, but he only played 10 games that year. So what does this mean for the Eagles' running back position? Because we know Penny did play in basically a committee over there in Seattle.
So the guys that, Penny, by the way, he can't sign until 4:01 Eastern tomorrow. Gainwell, Penny, Trey Sermon, and they need one more back. Now, that back could come in any form, draft, later in free agency. It could come in any way, shape, or form. And look, Miles Sanders coming back, I just don't see any way you can do this because Penny's got to play. Gainwell's their third down back. It would make no sense. And again, they want to look at Sermon. Now, Boston Scott could be that guy. I mean, and I know the Eagles have some interest in bringing him back. Would it surprise anyone if he came back? No. And that would pretty much complete the running back position. But we have to wait and see. And obviously, to bring Boston Scott back, it wouldn't cost very much.
So you mentioned Miles Sanders a couple times. What is next for him in your mind?
Yeah, boy. This is what we were expecting. We thought the first day of running backs would be quiet. It was. Other than Matt Breida re-signing with the Giants, it was extremely quiet at that position. I know people in the league thought he'd be looking to get $7 million a year. I don't know that he gets that now. Maybe he only gets $5 million. We'll have to see. Plenty of teams still need a running back. However, he has teams interested in him, but he's not getting the kind of money that he probably thought he was getting at this point. But we're only in the second day of free agency.
Talk with Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Adam, let's hit on a couple of the guys who departed yesterday. Javon Hargrave, big money to go to the 49ers, but what does this mean for the Eagles D-tackles?
Boy, all right, so it's 4 years, $84 million. It's basically major fully guaranteed money for 2 years, then the Niners could get out of it. But so this is another guy we did not expect to come back. We had heard that the Eagles would have considered bringing him back, but the money was obviously way out of their league, not even close. So with Fletcher Cox up, Sue and Joseph up, right now Jordan Davis will be a starter. We all know that. He's just got to get in better shape. They like Milton Williams as their third tackle. Tui Pelotu's coming off a big injury. They like this Noah Ellis, by the way, the other Ellis on the roster, and the Ellis brothers, one of the two Ellis brothers, one of three in the league. He's a guy that is a run-stopping guy, though. That's the problem. They need a pass-rushing defensive tackle. That's right. That's, Josh, right now what they are missing.
Do you think that is a position they can address in free agency, or do you think that might be something more likely in the draft?
Well, the pass-rushing D tackles out there, they're only like 2 or 3. Jaron Reed is by far the best one. He's a journeyman D tackle, around 30 years old, but puts up numbers everywhere he goes. He's been on 4 or 5 teams. Of course, Fletcher Cox, should mention him. He can rush the passer. He's obviously not quite what he was years ago. Akeem Hicks is a guy that can rush the passer a little bit. He's very strong against the run, but he's had a lot of injuries and he's older. So the D-tackle market has been picked over. Not a lot left of pass rushers. So to me, if they wouldn't get someone like Jaron Reed, you'd have to look at the draft.
Of course, you can learn more about Jerry if you go back and listen to Greg Cosell's conversation with the guys on the Inside the Birds podcast. I thought what he had to say about Reed was very interesting on that pod, Adam. Over to safety, Marcus Epps, 2 years, $12 million.
Well, that was later than we thought. Yeah, in fact, I know one team said that when they had heard the numbers, they were like, whoa, whatever he was looking for initially, that this team I talked to said, we're not doing anywhere close to that. And he wound up doing 2 years at $12 million with the Raiders. Now, he might be from the West Coast, and I know the tax structure is very good in Las Vegas, but when you look at that deal that Epps got, Josh, with the Raiders, they could more or less get out of it after one season. It's got a structure like he's going to make about $6 million in year one, and then they have to make a decision on the third day for agency to get out of it. But they would owe him if they get out of it just over $3 million next season. That would be fully guaranteed anyway. But teams would walk away from that. It would tell me, Josh, it doesn't seem to me that the Eagles really tried hard to get him back, which is interesting because when you really look at it, all they've got right now, because Gardner Johnson is still unsigned.
Right.
You got Kevon Wallace, who's obviously not a starter. He's on the final year of his rookie deal going into 2023. Reed Blankenship was a really good find for them as an undrafted free agent, but it's more of a third safety. So, boy, their secondary right now with Darius Slay potentially being traded, Bradbury maybe changing agents, by the way. His contract's up. So there's a lot of change here.
By the way, you were correct. Marcus Epps, born in Burbank, California, went to college in Wyoming.
Hey, Josh, I have to run. I'll call you right back.
Absolutely. Adam Caplan here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Hey, there's Adam's a hardworking man. When there's news to break, he gets to it. So we only had a certain amount of time with him anyway. But back to the Epps point, I had mentioned to you guys previously about, Epps was one of many of the safeties that came off the board yesterday. And, we saw that, look, when you saw Bates get all that money, when you saw Von Bell get all that money, then you saw Epps get 2 years, 12, Adam brings up a great point. Does this organization just not value certain guys, or are they trying to conserve money to bring back the other guys? This is kind of the balancing act. It's the idea, you heard Adam say Kyzir White got added in April of last year. Well, it's March 14th. We got a whole month before the Eagles sometimes add people. So are the Eagles going to let the market play out? Are the Eagles going to let the market, kind of recalibrate and find itself while they figure things out? It's a question to be asked. This is an organization that has not been hasty under Howie Roseman ever since Howie took over back in 2016 again in the aftermath of Chip Kelly being fired. They have not been an organization that has been, panic mode. There's never been a panic mode from this organization. And I believe we have Adam back right now for Football at 4. Adam, is that you?
Yeah, sorry, my friend. I had to put a story out. The Chargers just re-signed the right tackle, so I had to put that out there.
Gotcha. So back to Epps and the safety, you were mentioning what this means really quick for the Eagles safeties. Obviously, they have a lot of guys unsigned right now. Yes.
Yeah, in fact, as I said, Blankenship was a great story of development. Sasha is more of a special teamer, and they like to take a look at Marquise Blair, a former draft pick for the Seahawks, is very talented, but he's had a lot of injuries. So he's the kind of guy, Blair, boy, that I like to see because he's got great size and he could hit. He's over 6'1". He's had a ton of injuries, but keep an eye on him in the offseason. We're going to take a look at him.
And really quick before you get out of here, Adam, tell folks what's going on with the Inside the Birds podcast this week.
Yep. So we dropped our latest Greg Cosell show with running backs. And by the way, we do talk about Rashaad Penny on there briefly, and then about 10 unrestricted free agents who are out there that we had not talked about before. And then we dropped our next show tomorrow morning, actually it'll be Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern on all podcast platforms.
Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirdsPod.com, and of course follow Adam on Twitter at Caplan NFL. Adam, enjoy the rest of your day and try to keep juggling that news, all right?
Thank you. See you.